All right. So another topic that really comes up is protesting. Protesting for blacks versus protesting for white and how we do it. You know, the Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem was such a kettle pot that was about to explode. You know, people thought that was so offensive. Personally, I think that that's perfectly fine. We are in our right to protest in this country, and taking a knee, you know, during the national anthem is representing the fact that the country does not represent the words for you and for your culture, and that's what he did. And so white people had a problem with that. You know, flag burning, big thing in the '90s, but it's in our right to burn the flag. It's not breaking any laws in doing so. But again, white people had a problem with that. And white people did it, but in that case, they had a problem with that. So,
Right.
you know, what do you guys think on protesting? What's right? What's wrong? You know, why is it that people have a problem when you burn the flag or take a knee during the national anthem? What are your thoughts on all that?
My personal thing is there's no right way to protest. There's no wrong way to protest because they're just forms of speech. Bottom line. Whether you burn a flag or you take a knee or you protest to sit in the front of the bus or you walk around holding a sign, whatever it is you're going to do, it's still protest. People have the right to petition their government for grievances that they have. Now, the issue I think some people took, was that, well, they can't protest in a private place, like at the workplace, different things like that. But the fundamental point of any protest is attention seeking. It is to draw attention. It is to draw people in. It is to be seen. It is to be heard because there's a problem. People seemingly don't want to see that when it comes to black people or it comes to women or minority groups. And they think there's this magical, fundamental, proper time and proper place to protest and when you should. And that's just bullshit. Um, so you go back to this whole country was founded on a protest. I don't know why people keep skipping over that fucking point. It's tied to the history of America. Boston Tea Party. They rioted, they protested, they marched, and when that didn't work, they fucked shit up. They threw tea over the boats. They tarred and feathered tax collectors. They robbed places, stole the tea out of the harbor, and dumped it back into the sea. They fought an entire war, which is one big ass protest. If you want to be technical about it, it just is. They formed an entire Declaration of Independence after trying to plead with King George in letters to beg for their freedom, or not even so much their freedom, but to be represented in the monarchical government. So all forms of protest, all public displays,
But they were
all
white.
petition, right? But they were white. So if we look at now's context, we're gonna fast forward this. Black people protest. What do black people protest? Civil rights, against police abuse, and that's pretty much it. There's really two lanes. Boycotts might be something different. You might boycott a private company, this and that. But as far as the real large mass scale protests black folks do, it's usually over some kind of governmental or structural governmental grievances that we have as a group, we have as a people. When we do it, we're wrong. If a brother privately kneels on the side, nobody's paying him no damn attention to it. They ask him why he protests, he gives his answer, that's a problem. Well, he can't do that in his off time. He does it on his off time, y'all still have a problem. He There's no way for us to properly ever do it. We march, we burn a flag, as far as flag burning goes. I don't see an issue with that. It's fabric. Patriotism isn't confined to a flag or not. You either feel it or you don't. But patriotism in the American sense doesn't mean that the country is above criticism. And I think that's what they're upset about, because to criticize America, you're criticizing white supremacy, and they have a fucking problem with that because they have to feel uncomfortable. All the statues and shit coming down, and Confederate flags coming down, and people want to get rid of Confederate monuments and statues to Columbus and John C. Calhoun and all these other people. It forces people to deal with the reality. There's a lot of racial shit in this country, and it's uncomfortable. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine how uncomfortable it is when every block you see symbols of racists, rapists, murderers, all that shit. It's not to them, it's history, and it's positive and uplifting. And while it is history, it doesn't mean it's necessarily positive or uplifting. It is degrading. They've done a lot of horrible shit. and you want to have this prideful feeling in America that we're the good guys. You want to believe that narrative. It, it's like finding Santa Claus on the pipe. That's what it is. They don't want to believe in that. They want to go, America's always good. America's always right. We fought for. You didn't fight for everybody. Slaves weren't free. Women didn't have voting rights. Poor whites, if you want to take it there, didn't have rights either. There was an elite class of white people, the business owners, the rich who wanted the war. They got your dumb ass to fight it if you want to push it that far, but they made you buy in that. You're not rich right now, and you're white and you're poor. We're going to treat you like shit, and we're not going to bring you in just yet, but we're going to give you a little bit of power, give you a little bit of taste, so you're not on the social caste rung as a slave, but you nowhere near us. You're not getting to the country club, but you get to work at the country club. You're not going to be like the niggas, but you get to work at the country club, so you're just a little bit above them. So they attach themselves to that pride, and they feel good, and they don't have to confront things that are uncomfortable. They don't have to deal with it. They can buy into that narrative that America's always the good guys, and it's just not true. It's just not, and it's uncomfortable, and it doesn't feel right, and all the shit that history has whitewashed is coming up. And real historians are like, no, this happened like this. No, this was done like that. I mean, Black people largely lived in what is now Central Park. The value of that fucking real estate now would be into the billions. But they cleared those people off forcibly. They didn't give them a nice little eviction letter. They were forcibly removed. Never adequately, fully compensated for that property. The price was definitely watered down for them, and it's not like you were Black and you own this property. You could object to the pricing. It was, nigga, you take this $20, or you're gonna be lynching from that tree over yonder. So that's how that went down. There's plenty of slavery or burial mounds all across New York City. So dealing with all of that kind of history, where our foundations for capitalism and society were all built, it's all so ubiquitous and baked in, and to see all your symbols that you were brought up to believe were good and honest and personal accountability and always striving to be the light on the shining hill, when you lived up to no real parts of that for the better part of 246 years, and really still an ongoing issue, even though you got better just because you don't actual slave, just because you've had some civil rights legislation. Culturally, we are a very racist society, from division in the suburbs to the public school infrastructure, how that's funded, to the prison and pipeline system, to employment. There's so many imbalances, and now it's all coming to the surface, and the big question is what to do about it. And it doesn't give anybody that warm and fuzzy feeling when you read the Declaration of Independence. You got to realize, oh shit, they didn't mean slaves. When you read the Constitution, you read the Bill of Rights, you got to go, fuck, they had to put a 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment in there. Damn shit, they had to put in something to give women the right to vote. Damn it. Like, all these corrections had to be made after. So when you look at the foundations of how America was started, none of that's pretty. You have to realize, oh shit, that's right, to get all this land, they had to kill off the Native Americans and do an entire genocide and justify it with Manifest Destiny and Andrew Jackson and all that shit. They forcibly took Native Americans from their lands and put them in middle America, Tornado Alley, Oklahoma, and places like that. And you don't want to hear that. You want to believe in the good fairy tale that we're always kind and we're morally superior to the rest of the world, and we're just pieces of shit. And nobody wants to account for that. Nobody wants to deal with it, and it's uncomfortable. So when we protest these things about, hey, these are problems, hey, these are issues, hey, this is not right, hey, our civil rights are being violated on a constant basis, hey, we're constantly profiled, hey, we're constantly sanctioned and abused, they want to tune it out. They want to tune off the rest of the world and not think and not deal with it. They know they got benefits from it because they weren't subjected to it, but at the same time, they don't want to take responsibility to fix it either. Yes, I understand you're white, and your family might not have owned a slave. Hell, shit, your family might even fought for the Union. They might have never owned a slave. Doesn't mean you don't benefit from the effects of slavery or the whiteness. So when we protest, it is a big deal. You don't scream loud enough just for nothing, at least I would hope. But every black protest I see, it's always about something civil rights related. When white people protest, what do they usually protest over? Being told what to do. Wearing a mask. They were upset about that. You take an AK-47, the AR-15 Capitol, because you don't want to wear a fucking mask. You are protesting now because they want to defund the police, which is really asset reallocation. You don't want to do that. You're blowing up entire cities because your hockey team won a fucking championship, or because Pumpkin Festival, or because the Vancouver Canucks, they won the Stanley Cup. You're doing that kind of shit. That's when they primarily protest. Maybe if Uggs ran out of Target or something, they might protest then, but it's never something substantive. It's never civil rights related. It's never even Occupy Wall Street. I think that was the first socially maybe progressive white protest in decades, aside from maybe protests and marches against slavery, which anti-slavery societies, which were very few and in between when you start digging into those records. But they largely hate us when we protest because basically it's like, you're black, just deal with it. The past is the past. Can we please move on? We don't want to talk about this because it makes us uncomfortable. Can you just please go back to the corner and suffer in silence? That's what we want. They want us to protest, but in a way that doesn't offend them, that doesn't bring attention, that doesn't make people feel sympathetic. It's what they want. So every time we just know what right way for us to ever do it, every single time, and it gets tiring and it gets exhausting, but it's work that has to be done by us. It's always us. None of the other groups who ride on the piggybacks, a lot of that civil rights legislation, Asians, Latinos, it's always us. But it's just the way I feel about I feel nothing wrong with protest. I say be as loud as possible, be obstructive, get in their way, don't make them comfortable, because we still are not comfortable here. Things still need to be fixed. There's always some battle to be fight that's bigger. We black people do not have first world problems. We have America problems. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, cool. Like that. Next. Doesn't matter who wants to go. You go, Sean.
I'll go. So let's start with this. Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It's the First Amendment for a reason. Protest is as much a part of the fabric of the United States as apple pie, baseball, guns, slavery, genocide, and pretty much all the other terrible and wonderful things you can think of when you think of America. There is no effective way to protest that doesn't make someone uncomfortable. That's the entire point of a protest. If it doesn't make you uncomfortable, it's very easy for you to ignore what people are protesting about. So in order for a protest to be effective and to affect change, it has to make people who can change things uncomfortable. It has to raise awareness in the populace so that they join your cause and make people even more uncomfortable. It's only by reducing the comfort level and making people aware that, yes, this is a real issue, that you can actively, effectively cause change to happen in a society. It's not going to happen because people wake up one day and go, oh, you know what? We've been really bad to black folks for about 400 years. Maybe we should do something about that. That's not how it works. The oppressor never gives anything. You have to take things from the oppressor. That's the only way you're ever going to get change. Now, as far as method of protest, when it comes to black folks, there is no proper method of protest. Peaceful protests in the streets, nope, we're going to pepper spray you, we're going to stick the dogs on you, we're going to use hoses on you, we're going to beat you. Kneeling before a football game, no, that's disrespectful to the flag. Never mind that soldiers actually kneel during the national anthem to remember fallen comrades. And it was a serviceman who suggested to Colin Kaepernick that he kneel during the national anthem rather than sit, because sitting was disrespectful, whereas kneeling is not. I've only in the protests of NFL players has anyone ever called kneeling disrespectful. Now, as for burning the flag, I want to bring something up. There's actually a flag code for the United States. And it says how to properly dispose of an American flag. When the flag is in such a condition that it is no longer a fitting emblem, it should be destroyed in a dignified and ceremonious fashion, preferably by burning. So when a flag is too worn and too tattered to be flown anymore, you're supposed to take it down and burn it. But burning it as a form of protest is somehow a bad thing and disrespectful of the flag when that's how you're supposed to get rid of flags. Oh, by the way, you're not actually supposed to wear flags as a piece of clothing. You're not supposed to use a flag on your store and like draw on it. You're not supposed to fly the flag of your campaign above the American flag, or the flag of your store above the American flag. NFL games, you're not supposed to actually hold a flag out flat. It's a violation of flag code. So that big giant American flag the size of a football field that they unfurl before every game, huge violation of flag code. Nobody ever says anything. But you take a knee to protest police brutality, and all of a sudden you're being disrespectful of that flag that everybody loves so much, and you're violating the flag code that everybody seems to know by heart when it's a black man making a protest, but has no clue about, or any other use of the flag that's improper. This country was literally founded with the words in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When Black people protest, it is to try and make America live up to the ideals upon which it was founded. Nothing more. Black people protest for the right to be treated as human beings that matter, not second-class citizens that don't. We protest for the right to exist. That's it. We're not asking to be better. We're not asking to be treated differently. We want to be treated the same as people who aren't treated like second-class citizens. But I guess when you've been privileged your entire life, equality feels like oppression. I've heard that a lot. It actually seems to be true, because the people who complain the most are the people who would basically just be made equal with all these other groups that they've been able to look down on for basically ever. And that thought scares them. That and the thought that they think that if Black and brown people actually gain too much power in this country, we might turn around and treat them the way they've been treating us for 400 years. And that thought truly terrifies most of white America. That's really what they fear in the browning of America, is that white people will become a minority and the majority will treat them like they have treated minorities. They know deep in their hearts and sometimes in their conscious minds that they have treated minorities terribly, that they have discriminated against them, they have persecuted them, they have destroyed everything that they've tried to build in this country. And they are terrified that if the shoe is on the other foot, everyone will turn around and do the same thing to them. That's the real deep fear behind the browning of America. That's the fear of Black people protesting, of Latinos protesting, anybody protesting for change and a redress of grievances. They think they're going to start down a slippery slope and they'll eventually end up to the point where they won't be in power anymore and they might not even be equal. They might be a little less than equal, and that everybody will turn around and go, now the shoe is on the other foot. Let's see how you like being racially profiled and redlined and having your houses burned and your children hung from trees and all the things that you've been doing to Black and brown people since forever.
So yeah, they definitely think that we'll seek revenge, and that's one of their greatest fears. That's why it's funny. It's a cycle. They think that we'll seek revenge when all we want is fair and equal treatment, and by denying us that, they keep the cycle going. Their fears keep it going. So it's amazing, but yeah, I agree with that. What you got, Hannibal?
Well, I referenced this individual before we started this was our pre-discussions, right? And this is from Chief Justice Robert B. Taney, right? So he writes, this is the Dred Scott case. In the opinion of the court, the legislation and the histories of the times and the language used in the Declaration of Independence show that neither the class of persons who had been imported as slaves nor their descendants whether they had become free or not, were then acknowledged as a part of the people, nor intended to be included in the general words used in that memorable instrument. They had a far more than a century been regarded as beings of an inferior order and altogether unfit to associate with the white race, either in social or political relations, and so far inferior that they know that they had no rights which the white man was bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his benefit. That's what we're dealing with in essence. That case, that judgment was made in 1853, 7 years before the Civil War. The thing is, that sentiment is not gone from the foundations of our nation. So he said in the Declaration of Independence that those words were not meant for us. So basically, us protesting the flag, which is representing the United States, Declaration of Independence, Constitution, is protesting the people who it's meant for, which are white people. So we take a knee, we sit in, we stand in, we march, doesn't matter. You are protesting the country, which is equivalent of the nation. You're protesting white people, which is protesting the country. And we would not abide for that, because this is our country. Dre, you touched on that when you indicated, from, the mass genocide of Native Americans, slavery of Black people. Those people were not intended to be the people, according to this judge, the people that Chief Justice Taney was referencing. Those people are ancillary. If they don't serve a purpose like the Native American, like blacks did, then they need to be carted off or killed off.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about protests, we can go into long oratories about, this is what the flag means. And that's, all of these things are true. All of these things are the way it should be. But I think Judge Taney, Chief Justice Taney, encapsulated what was relevant then to what is relevant now. That we have no rights that the white man is bound to respect.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely. Well, okay, so I think I don't know if you guys remember a movie called The American President. It was done like in the 90s. It was
that with Chris Rock?
No, that's Head of State, I believe. American President was Michael Douglas and Annette Bening. And it was written and produced by Aaron Sorkin, who also created The West Wing. So there was a speech at the end that Michael Douglas did, and just an excerpt from that. And at the time, it was about flag burning as being the protest issue. So just the part of that I wanted to touch upon was where he said, America isn't easy. America is advanced citizenship. You've got to want it bad because it's going to put up a fight. It's going to say, you want free speech? Let's say you acknowledge a man whose words make your blood boil, who's standing center stage and advocating at the top of his lungs that which you would spend a lifetime opposing at the top of yours. You want to claim that this is a land of the free, then the symbol of your country cannot just be a flag. The symbol also has to be one of its citizens exercising his right to burn that flag in protest. Now show me that, defend that, celebrate that in your classrooms. Then you can stand up and sing about the land of the free. And I think that statement itself explains what protesting is in this country, no matter what it is. Flag burning, on the knee, peaceful sit-in, stand-in, whatever. As long as you're not breaking laws and protesting in any way, shape, or form.
Just laws.
Well, just laws. Like you're not tearing down a statue like was done recently in Lafayette Park. That's not the way to get the statue. No, well, I mean, in all fairness, it's not the way to get it removed, because that is vandalism. Let's keep it real. Regardless of what you think about it, That's vandalism. I mean, there's a way to get it. Statues get removed by the state legislator and so forth, and they got it removed that way. In this case, the mob just removed the damn self. That's not fair. But peaceful protest is not illegal. Flag burning is not illegal. Taking a knee during the singing of the national anthem is not illegal. It is a choice. And we need to stop demonizing that as being something that's anti-America. These people who say that are the ones who throw up their foam fingers. America's number one. America this. And they don't understand what America is. They just think they live here and it's the greatest country ever and we're first at everything, which we're not, by the way. But it's like a pep rally. America is everything great, but they don't know what America is. So what makes America great is the fact that you can protest. You can question your leadership. They work for you. We elect them to represent us, even the president. President's not a king. They work for the citizens. And as a citizen, it is your right to question and to protest if you deem necessary. And that's what could make democracy in America great. But the people that attack protesters, that attack fair and just protesting and opinions are the ones that make America bad in a sense. And more points to that, what Dre said, of course, what Sean said, you're right. People of color, the words in the Declaration weren't meant for us. Now, today, things have changed. You have amendments to the Constitution, but it's still a work in progress. America is always going to be a work in progress to get to a more perfect union, as it does say. We might not ever get there, but it's always supposed to be improving itself. We might be progressing some, but we're supposed to be improving ourselves. So part of protesting is a way to improve yourself, is a way to help change government. As we can see right now, protesting the killing of Black men by the police so far in a matter of weeks has made things move faster than it has moved in the last 5 years. Now, where that goes, we don't know. But because of protests, it does force politics to change somewhat. So I'm all for peaceful protest. I'm all for flag burning if you deem it necessary as your form of protest, or taking a knee for the national anthem, especially when you don't believe in the creed of the words of the country. Why sing about it? It doesn't represent you. It doesn't represent what you believe and who you are. So why do you have to stand and honor it? It isn't your right as a citizen to not do so. And that's what we have to accept.
I agree. I mean, it's just the way America is, but nobody wants to acknowledge that. Like I said, it's too uncomfortable for that to be acknowledged in this country. And unfortunately, the coronavirus, ironically, is what played into the hands to allow all this, because people are home, people are out of work, they have time to read, they have time to watch the protests, they have time to watch all the YouTube videos. They are basically, for the last, I think 3 weeks it's been, 3.5 weeks, getting a nice steady diet of black pain that makes them have to read the Declaration, read the Constitution, to learn about slavery and racism, and go, this is uncomfortable. I gotta deal with this, and it's a problem. So now you see, ironically, more white people protesting. It's funny how they try to spin the narrative of protesters, but then places like Seattle, parts of Texas, Kansas, white people mostly protesting. Black people are, but you see a lot, obviously more white people are protesting because the country's mostly white. They don't frame it in the same way or the same context. They're trying to. And in some cases, it's succeeding. They try to use protesters and rioters interchangeably, and everybody has rightfully called it out on it. There is a difference. When you protest, you're always going to get opportunists. See it Rodney King, Watts riots, take your pick. Even during the founding of the country, you have people protesting for righteous reasons, and you still have shops being looted. So it's nothing new. It's just the way it goes. But you do that to try to demonize the righteousness of the people protesting, the morality of the people. Why? You saw it during slavery. You're hiding slaves. How could you? You're breaking the law. You're doing something wrong. You know, well, it's perfectly fine. Moral and ethical guidelines to do so. But they don't want to admit that, though, because to invalidate the laws, to invalidate the Constitution, to invalidate racism would be to invalidate America. And nobody wants to deal with that. But now you can't. It's unavoidable. As much as I like Cuomo, he's having his Obama moment about the Columbus statue. Obama was the same way about gay marriage at first. He was, I don't know, this kind of don't sort of feel right. I don't know what I'm going to do. But over time, you realize it. And there's a lot of Italians and a lot of Italian Americans you can pick from to named after a public square, playing them, just not Columbus. So they're finally starting to see that, and they can't turn it off.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing about, if there's any good thing about the coronavirus, it was that the quarantine caused people to have to look at it. They couldn't be preoccupied with their lives. And,
Right.
you know, you're stuck at home, you're watching TV, you're on the internet, and all you see is these videos of countless Black men being killed by the police time and time again, played over and over again. And then, you know, you think this is the worst after George Floyd, and then what? Wait, man, just a week and a half, 2 weeks later, boom, another one happens, you know, in Atlanta and so forth. It's in our face. It was in our face in our community the whole time. Now it's in their face. And now it has to come to character. Are they going to turn a blind eye to it? Or are they going to actually do something about it? Does it really bother them? And, you know, for the Trumpers and the 38, 39% that support him, probably not. Most of them probably don't give a damn. But they never would anyway. I mean, there's a lot of racism in that core group, so you expect them not to be changed by it. But those other ones who weren't really, they didn't see it, who see it now, understand it, and they're like, wow, this is messed up. We can't have this happen. And that's why you're starting to see political change. Now, again, like I said, we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but hopefully the momentum increases and the push keeps going with this Congress and the next one. And more people keep joining the state all the way through election day and after that, and keep the coalition going, because change happens with the largest group, you know, just like the Boston Tea Party, you know, protesting massive numbers. They force political change. They force things to happen. And that's what has to happen now. We all have to just keep pushing, protest in any way possible. You know, marches are great. The numbers are great. The visual is great. But you got to also force that from a political standpoint. You got to force the politics to change. You got to force the legislation to change, the policy to change. You know, you got to go in to the police departments. You have to root out those type of people, because they're not all that way, but you got to get the ones that protect them, the ones that don't say anything. You got to make it, you got to hit their pockets. You know, everyone cares about the money. You got to find ways, political, sociological ways to make an impact. And, you know, just taking a knee is cool. Just making a march is cool, but it's not enough. It's a start, but keep pushing. Like you said, I think it was Sean who said that, or maybe it was Drab, I'm not sure, about how the Boston Tea Party, you know, escalated to that point. It started with, you know, one thing, this kind of protest and so forth. And so they took the tea, physically vandalized, and said, you know, the hell with this. We're going to throw this in, and we don't care about the tax in England and the tea. So protesting is what America was built on. It's how America started. And God forbid people of color protest the injustices too. But hey, you know, like it or not, we're here. We've been here. We're citizens too, and we have every right to protest in the way we see fit. And we're going to do so.
So one of the reasons the protests this time are different is not only their length and duration, but not only the fact that there's a bunch of white people out protesting alongside the Black people, but when you are protesting police brutality and you are able to watch on TV from news crews being attacked by police officers, you watch police officers behave badly towards protesters that are just walking by them, not doing anything. You see police officers pepper spraying people who aren't doing anything. You see them attacking people who aren't doing anything. They're pushing down 75-year-old white men and putting them in the hospital. So when the core message of your protest is police need to be held accountable for their actions because their actions are out of control, and you're able to watch on the news police acting out of control, it just underscores the point of the protest even more. The only disturbing thing about this is the FBI and the police are really putting a lot of effort into tracking down protesters via social media and other tracking methods to try and arrest or harass them. There was recently a hack of an IT firm that hosts a lot of fusion databases where law enforcement share information between agencies. And there's a lot of information that was leaked from that about various police agencies talking about different protesters, where these protesters might be, how to actually actively go after these protesters. They're trying to identify and punish people whose only crime is protesting the police, which is a dangerous trend should it continue and go unchecked. blows my mind that police have this visceral a reaction to people basically saying, we want you to be held accountable for doing your job properly. We want you to obey the law. I mean, you're police. That's your entire job, is to make sure people obey the law. And when they don't obey the law, you're supposed to arrest them and make sure that they are rendered for punishment. Do you not see the irony in not wanting to have those rules applied to you? Police are often fond of saying, if you're not breaking the law, you don't have to worry about us. Well, society is turning around and telling police, if you're not breaking the law, you don't have to worry about us either. And cops don't like it, not one bit. There's a certain psychological profile for a large number of police officers, or what seems like a large number of police officers. They joined the force because they wanted to have power over people. And they wanted to use that power in ways that are unchecked. They wanted, I can do whatever I want to have a badge. It's that sort of mentality that seems to pervade a number of law enforcement departments in this country. And it needs to go away. It needs to go away fast. And that's the only way these protests are going to stop, is when there's real, meaningful, concrete change, not the lip service of politicians, not police departments whining about being held accountable, not conservatives saying, you people should be lucky that the cops don't just completely walk off the job and leave you, to your own devices. None of that's going to work. The protests have gained too much momentum. There's too much public awareness. When you reach a critical mass in public awareness and the rightness of an idea, there's no stopping it. And if we haven't reached that point already, we're very, very close to reaching that point. And it's going to leave a lot of Blue Lives Matter folks very, very upset. And honestly, I don't give a fuck.
I love the ending of that. What to say? You guys covered so much ground on this issue, but there's a couple of things that stuck in my mind. One of which, when I think, Kyle, you discussed, they don't know what America is. I think they're thinking the same thing. I'm thinking they're carrying on the legend, the legacy, not even the legend, but the legacy of Taney and Co., where they're sharing that you don't know what America is. America is about maintaining what I want to do and what I think America should be. The cops are here to make sure that you poor and other people stay in line. Remember, the founding fathers were patricians. They were rich men, rich white men. They weren't your regular rabble. These guys were highly educated, brilliant men who fomented an insurrection. This wasn't a rabble rouser like, hey, we working on this farm and we're tired of it. We ain't gonna take it no more. No. These were brilliant, wealthy men, trained, highly educated, and trained. A lot of them trained in the military, which is why they offered George Washington to be king. He was like, no, we set out to create a quote unquote democracy, i.e. the purpose of us was saying, we are smart, rich white men, but we're not nobility. We are fighting against nobles. We're just as good as them, clearly. So we want to create a different sort of government. Nobles don't earn their title. I mean, at some point, their ancestors were better killers than the people around them and rose to power. But the descendants didn't do shit, right? So they're like, we want a more of a white meritocracy of a government. That's why no one could vote but rich white men at the beginning, right? So that brings it, I'm tying it all back. That was the purpose. That's why every I would say every majority member, middle American, is a Joe Plumber, because they think that one day I'll be a millionaire, I'll be a multi-millionaire. And I'm not talking about lifelong savings. I'm talking about I'm going to have a job, or I'm going to have assets that generate millions of dollars a year. I'm going to be that white patrician. That'll never happen. But that's the dream. And that's based on them being white. And if you take that away from them, that's a problem. That is their birthright. That is their dream. That is not your dream. And back to the cops' purpose is to protect property. They went after slaves because they were property. They were property of rich white men. And I want to hear no shit about black people owned slaves too. The black slave owners basically bought their family and was able to protect them because they quote unquote owned them. But they bought their family because they were their family, and they didn't want them to be working on a plantation or wherever anymore. So let's toss that out from the jump. But again, the slave patrols were there to protect property. The Supreme Court ruled that a cop is not really there to protect you. So if something happens, they're not held liable for you getting messed up. That is not their job. So when you see people getting pepper sprayed and beaten and white, black, whatever, their job is to protect, I guess now, corporations, which is a endless, faceless, typically white entity or person, but they're there to protect the interests of rich property owners, which tend to be white. So basically, when we protest, we're protesting them, and we're protesting their instrument of control. Because like with that article that I sent earlier today, the whole basis of what these right-wing libertarian types want to be the focus of America, in which they can create a new oligarchy, neo-feudalism, is the protection of property. The laws are to protect property. The military and police protect property. If you own property, then you have rights. If you don't own property, you're just there to serve the people who own the property. Typically, that's not us, especially not us, right? So back to the original statement, it's, do we know what America is? We know what America should be, but do we know? Their resistance to us trying to achieve what America should be is basically telling us, yeah, that's not your America. That's our America. And we'll fight you tooth and nail to prevent you from having it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I think in the sense when I said they don't know America, I think I was really referring to the words that are in the Declaration, the words of the preamble of the Constitution. Regardless of the founding fathers being, intellectuals, wealthy, and so forth, the words themselves left room, even if they didn't intend.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even if they didn't intend at the time, and we knew all the founding fathers didn't believe in slavery and didn't want to free them, and they had a huge debate about that. But regardless, fast forward, the words America is a experiment of evolution, supposedly, and so where we are today, the people who are trying to pull us back 100, 200 years, ultimately will fail because they're a small number. They're going to try. They're going to fight to the death to keep it what it used to be or to pull it back to what it was. They don't recognize America. I mean, it was like Obama being in office. He didn't understand the code words. He didn't understand America. He's an outsider. He's like, we know what that was. But at the end of the day, they're a small group. They will fight. They make a lot of noise, but ultimately they are outnumbered. And eventually time will wear them out. Like, I believe that. That's the evolution of America. Assuming that we don't allow Trump and his cronies to destroy it before we have a chance. And they're doing their best job to do so. And it might not last.
My guy, it's been 150 years.
And change is forever slow, forever. It could be another 150 years or 300.
So, again, I'm not saying that you're wrong in the terms of what America should be. based on the words that were written.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you to look at the rubber meeting the road.
Oh no, I get that, and I'm not saying that
Right,
that's not
So,
accountable.
and along those lines,
and that's what we're protesting. And that's the two
Okay.
sides, like you spoke to earlier. Like they're always going to accuse us of not understanding. We're going to accuse them of not understanding. It's the liberal versus conservative. It's always going to be the two-sided edge of the coin.
no, here's the difference. They understand quite fine what those words say.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Remember,
their interpretation of it.
Hold on, they're the strict constitutionalists.
Oh,
They're the federal paper readers. So 10 years of being on Facebook, knowing Johns and people like him, that doesn't sound right. Knowing John Tyrone and people like him.
There you go.
Shut the hell up. Knowing John Tyrone's and the people like him, they ardently believe in context. Remember, they're strict constitutionalists. This is what the founding fathers would believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
That this is the state that it needs to be in. They're trying to conserve that state. And if we're talking about, it's a minority of people. Well, again, I already referenced it's been 150 years and 170 plus since Taney, right?
Mm-hmm.
Along those lines, a third of the population supported the British, if not more. A third or less supported George Washington and company. So it sort of reflects what's going on now, right? I'll say the quote-unquote Republicans, and I'm using this for proxy, and I hate to use parties for political ideology because they flip-flop, they change, right? But for the purposes of this, a third of the people are Democrats. A third are now Trump Republicans, or at least follow that because they're quote-unquote winning. And then you have a bunch of people in the middle. That's how it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
So the question would be, how do we win?
Mm-hmm.
That's the unanswered question.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
but hold on, but change. How do you make small steps of change? You're right. That breakdown of the population is pretty accurate. It's who's in power at the time and what they do with the power when they're in there. And this is why you see the
King George was in power at the time, and that nigga got his ass whipped.
But that was war. I mean, that was war against the outside force. But then you break down the Civil War, and you see a 4-year battle, a 4.5-year battle that was like totally different. And now we are now. It's just tribalism at its worst. Probably the worst it's been since the Civil War. And so now it's either going to be, is it going to be a physical battle like the Civil War? Is it going to be a battle like that? Is it going to be a sociological battle? Is it going to be a legislative battle? Is it going to be all the above? I mean, that part is yet to be written. But it's going to be a battle. And who comes out on top?
Like George Carlin said, your owners are not going to allow that. They own it.
You can only keep it down for so. If that's the case, then why did the Civil War happen? How did they allow that? The point is, how did the British allow the American Revolution? Again, people will rise up from oppression at some point. There was money then. There was always money. The British Empire was the richest empire at the time.
Yes, it was.
And
I'm saying there's always money involved, but oppression.
How much more money would you have by opening up, by ensuring stability, even with a short conflict? How much more money would you make by ensuring stability of a colony? That's still really a colony of the Anglo-American Empire. You don't want no friction. You don't want them separating because you can't control them.
I don't think you'll have a secession issue like you did in the Civil War. But what you're going to have is you're going to have a sociological war this time around. You know, it's not going to be.
But that brings conflict. Because it
can't. Well, hey, you know what? It always does. And then the point is that they're doing their damn good job to make sure that does happen. They're not trying to stabilize it. They want that to happen. They are drawing a line in the sand, and it's this side against that side. And it can't be state by state because we're all mixed together now. And it definitely can't be race by race because you got like white people who are Black Lives Matter. I mean, we're mixed so much now, it's going to be sociological. That's the only divide that you can actually battle. What ideals, your idealism, what do you believe in versus what this person believes in? And we're going to be mixed together. So how do you fight that battle? It's not going to be territorial as far as states go. So
Oh yeah,
it's,
that's dumb. That's not going to happen.
yeah.
Like I
So
said,
that's the
I
new
don't
that's the
believe
new
in
battle. So
another-
how's that gonna be fought?
So here's the difference between now and then. Now you have an ownership class, let's call them. Who have,
Neo-feudalism.
yeah, it's they have 170 years plus of studies of human psyche and social group dynamics and how to actually control public opinion. And the division is actually what they want, right? These divisions are exactly what the people in the ownership or professional managerial class want.
Hey,
Because as long as people at the bottom are divided and pitted against one another, they're not unifying against the people who are actually fucking up their lives. Poor white people and poor black people have far more in common than poor white people have with rich white people. Certainly more than they have in common with rich black people. Although there are a lot fewer, really rich black people. But if those two groups, if all the people at the bottom 80% of America actually got together and said, you know what, this entire system is bullshit. And it doesn't matter whether you're white or you're black or you're brown or you're Asian, it's all just shit. We're being screwed by the top 0.1%. And our lives are terrible because of it. And if we just got together and overthrew those guys, got all the bums out of government, and basically put people in there who were going to take an interest in what we want and what's best for us, things would actually change. That is the last thing anybody in that class wants. This Matter movement and supporting the protesters, it's not just because it's good marketing, because you don't want to be like that company that didn't support the movement. It's also because the people at the top of those companies look at it and go, yeah, racial division in America is awesome because it keeps these two groups of people from ever getting together and trying to do something about us at the top.
and you can make money off of it.
You can make a ton of money off of it, right? You can sell to both sides. Every major media outlet in this country is controlled by a massive corporate conglomerate. There's a reason why you hear what you hear on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. You're hearing the talking points that those respective corporations want to push out to people who hold those respective viewpoints. If you're progressive or progressive leaning or left leaning, you watch MSNBC and you hear them talk about just how terrible the Republicans are and how terrible Trump is. And I agree, they're terrible, but that's all they really talk about. Unifying socioeconomic issues that people could get together and try and make active change and take power from the people at the top. It's the same thing on Fox News, it's just for the right. And then CNN is basically somewhere in the middle going, we just want to piss everybody off. So we got half the people on this side who hate us and half the people on this side who hate us. And as long as they hate us and they hate each other, they're never going to join forces and actually make any change. They're never going to look and go, if we people on the right, because the most underserved political group in the country are economically liberal, socially conservative people. If you're socially conservative and economically liberal, there's literally no one for you, right? Because all of the Republicans are socially conservative and economically conservative, and all of the Democrats are economically liberal and socially liberal. Well, in theory, anyway, because really what you've got on the Democratic side is a bunch of neocons who are economically more conservative and more socially liberal. So the Democrats and the Republicans have both gotten together on this whole finance side of things and said, yeah, we're really just going to work for the people at the top, the donor class, the folks who actually finance these massive campaigns that we have to run. We're going to put their interests ahead of the people who actually vote for us. And they both agree that that's the way that it's going to work. And they just sort of disagree on the social stuff because those are all wedge issues that you can drive people apart. People at MSNBC don't care if Donald Trump wins because that will give them 4 more years of being able to run programs saying how terrible Donald Trump is and don't you hate Donald Trump, but doesn't he make you angry? And that's ratings. Ratings mean dollars from advertisers. Fox News doesn't care if Donald Trump loses, because if Biden wins, that's 4 years of them going, Joe Biden and the Democrats are terrible. They're trying to take all these things away. And that's 4 years of fear mongering. And you know what that does? It drives ratings. Ratings drives dollars. And CNN doesn't care either way, because they're just going to tell you that whoever's in power is kind of terrible on one side, and they're going to have somebody else who says kind of terrible on the other. And they're just going to have these terrible sound bites that are 2 minutes long and don't resolve anything, and leaving you feeling like, what was the point of that? And that's the difference between now and, in the revolutionary time, where you could have a lot of money, but having a lot of money didn't buy you a lot of access. You could still only go as fast as a horse could take you or a ship could carry you. So it didn't matter whether you had $1 million or $100. Your speed was limited. So your influence and power was limited. These days, if you've got a lot of money and you've got a lot of power and you've got a lot of scientists working for you, you got a bunch of think tank people, you can spread your message around the globe like that and drive people apart and keep them from seeing that what they have in common is a lot more powerful than their differences.
Which I think that begs a question as to why Black people don't do all they can to become richer with better investing. But that might speak to education, because economically, that would be a lot of political power to have at your disposal. They can overnight transform the Democratic Party into something better or start an entirely new one. But that requires work. That requires discipline. That requires being savvy. That requires cutting expenses.
Don't you want to use the N-word right now?
I don't have to, but I can if it makes you feel any better. But
that mindset, Dre, is the minority mindset, right? It's a mindset of very, very few people in this country. Most people don't know anything about money or how money works. They don't know how to invest. They don't know how to save. They don't understand it because nobody teaches it. Because it's not in the best interest of anybody to teach you about money.
But again, that's a good point. So all these points come back to the fact that people don't understand certain aspects of investments, of money, of the words and the creed of the Constitution or the Declaration, of protest, of battles, of what created change in the country, of what the power elite want and what the people who are not in power have in common but yet can't come together on the same thing. It's like the middle of America now who support Trump and don't realize that technically he hasn't done a damn thing for them, really. I mean, he's lied to them, told them the economy was bad when it wasn't. The black man that tried to give them health care coverage, they crapped on, and then Trump took it away from them, and now they're mad because they don't have anything, but he took it away from them. Like, it's this whole issue of we're all speaking 45 million languages to each other, and no two are speaking the same thing. So bring that back to our protest issue. That side doesn't understand why Black Lives Matter and say, well, all lives matter. Well, no, in this case, all lives are not in jeopardy in the same way. We're not saying that Black Lives Matter and your life doesn't. We're saying that our lives matter because we're the ones that are being attacked. You are not. So yours is not in jeopardy. Therefore, we have to talk about these groups of people. You're not the ones being locked in cages or having family separations. Black people aren't having that problem, but Latino people are. So that matters.
Well,
I mean, as a group, so the thing is that we have to understand that everyone has issues, but if we don't understand each other's problems as best we can, and of course we can't fully because we're not each other. We are in the skin that we are. And so we can't always understand everything to that fullest extent, but we can be sympathetic, or at least try. And I think a certain group does not want to be. They don't care to be.
Most of the people who don't understand Black Lives Matter, they're mentally adding an only in front of the phrase Black Lives Matter instead of mentally adding a to at the end of the phrase.
Exactly.
Black Lives Matter.
Great point.
Black Lives Matter too, not
what
only
did
Black
Chief
Lives.
Justice Taney say?
Yeah, it goes back to that. And again, but like that's a good point, Hannibal. Like it's so ingrained in our culture and our history from so many years ago. And we can go back and divide the reasons why, from Reconstruction to the rewriting of history and so forth, how we got to the Confederacy being more poetic and not traitorous, which it was. And we are here today with that, and that culture, that middle America culture, that rural white mentality, it's so ingrained in there. They're not going to, like you said, Sean, they're not going to say Black Lives Matter too. Oh, well, how can you say America's not great? It's the best country. Well, it is for you, but maybe it's not for this group. You know, they'll never see that. And our protests are the only way to draw attention to it, you know, in any way, shape, or form. So protesting, you know, I'm trying to bring it back to that point because we kind of got on a tangent, but protesting itself is necessary. Protesting has to happen. And I think we're all in agreement that we should protest in any way, shape, or form that we can within the boundaries of the law, legal protesting, you know, of reasonable law, you know.
I just wish that Black folks, we need to do a better job of protesting financially. And I think that comes down, it's not, and people say those boycotts, it's not just, the boycotts don't matter. Sorry, but they don't really matter as much. If you're not saving your own money, if you're not investing, if you're not taking the 10 minutes out of every day to learn just a little bit about saving or investing, what are we protesting? Because economic freedom is freedom. They've laid it out in front of us since the very start of this country. You know, you don't see rich people wanting for nothing. Having money, being rich, being those things allows you time to not have to work for someone. If you don't have to work for someone who's a racist, it's really not a problem how much racist, because you can always escape. You can set up your family. You can set up generations. You can have that wealth. That's the only true power politically that anyone really has is money. There's a reason why most of the millionaires you see are in Congress. That's the biggest form of protest I think we can have collectively. Why buy Jordans when you can buy Nike stock? If you buy enough of the product, you should kind of make some dividends off that as well. You can get a say so.
That goes back to education. I mean, that starts all with education. Like you said, at the end of the day, this country isn't black or white. This country's green. It's always has been. It's green. Green is power.
Rich and poor. It's rich and poor. And I'm not going to say racial issues don't exist. I mean, I got plenty of friends who, some black, some white, have money, some don't, that will constantly, they like to constantly beat their head. Well, it's not just about racism. It's about a clash. That's part of it. That's part of it. Racism still exists. I mean, I don't give a fuck how rich you are to be a black guy. You still don't get pulled up by the cops driving a Mercedes because you're a black person driving a nice car. So your wealth can't save you. It can't inoculate you from all the problems of race that exist in America. That's just not going to happen. We're not set up that way. But what it can do is it can get you a better defense attorney. What it can do is make sure you have bails to get out of jail. What it can do is make sure you live in a better neighborhood and you're not in Inglewood in Chicago. It can get you to those places. It can do that for you. It can get you political access. It can get you an ear of a politician who would have ignored you. But when you can cut that check for $250,000 and make that campaign contribution, you're getting a little bit more than lip service. You're getting a phone call. You're getting a 15-minute to 1 hour conversation for their time. You get to influence them in ways you may not have done before. The average black guy driving a bus driver might not get, but the black guy who owns the biggest bus company in America, he's going to get a little more face time. He or she is going to be able to have that direct influence through osmosis to the political leaders that represent them or their district or their country or their state. They're going to do that. And so when I look at it, it's just like black people should be one group that should be harnessing their economic power when we never see it. We'll give money to everybody else, Chinese, to whites, to this, to that, to Jewish people. But we have a hard time with black-owned business. We don't want to support that. Black-owned business, one mistake, I'm never going back there again. Walmart, Target will fuck your shit up 50 times a day. You still keep going. We do it to ourselves, but we complain we don't have access, we don't have power. We have tons of it. You could make $5 an hour, $12 an hour now. Just putting your money away and not spending it is the first step. No one starts off with, well, most of us saying don't start off with millions of dollars in the bank account, just do what we want. But we scrimp and we save for vacation. We scrimp and we save to buy Jordan. We scrimp and we save to buy Rockaway Jacks. We scrimp and we save to buy Avery Jacks. We won't, and they'll be $200-$300 at a time. But you tell me you don't have $5 or $20 to invest per week, but you bought your kids in Jordans. So what purpose does that serve? Who did you make rich? Who did you just politically empower?
Well, it's reallocating our funds. Like we like people who work regular jobs. Like no, we're not going to buy $350 share stocks per share.
No,
stocks,
but
we can invest. We can invest in other ways, in other lower stocks and other types of investments. But you're right, we waste a lot of money on our materialism that we could actually put to advancing our economic state as individual households. And
it's the hardest conversation I've had, and I'm someone who volunteers time enough to try to spread financial information. I've done actual workshops where it's like, you don't have to when you want to invest, it doesn't take thousands of dollars in one shot. And people think it does, and that's one of the biggest battles in the black community I see all the time. It's like, well, I thought I had to have $500, but I thought I had to have $1,000. No, you could get started with $1. You just got to find the right places to go to with that dollar. But either way, those dollars add up. Even if you save that money for an entire year in the book, you can do it though. If your kid likes to, it's fine. Buy the stock. Trade options, but we don't. Right, and we as black folks have to. And education is power, knowledge is power, and money is power. So I think we collectively should do a better job of that. And then again, just starting with simple saving. Even before you get into investing, just save it. Why are we so heavily in credit card debt? We shouldn't be taking out payday loans. We shouldn't be taking out title loans. Even though it's a whole predatory practice, but that's another video we can discuss another day. But we have to start doing the things that economically empower us, because that ultimately leads to political power. That's just a fact. Nobody cares. Nobody pays us any attention when we're poor, and we're always like we're on welfare, and we look like we spend our money on dumb, stupid shit. It comes back to marketing. It comes back to a real form of protest. But if black people collectively stop spending a lot of money at these places, which is why these companies, a lot of them are probably behind Black Lives Matter, because this marketing is popular. You want to, and also they're looking at the racial demographics. That's also part of it. The country's getting browner, not whiter. And if I'm a company right now and I'm projecting out my next customer base for the next 20, 30 to 50 years, yeah, I'm going to Black Lives Matter this till it goes on, because I want customer loyalty. I want money. I want revenue. I stand with them now. They'll stand with me 40 years from now. That's where this is. That doesn't even count all the people that are biracial, that are having kids. The country is getting browner. So if we talk about a form of protest, then your dollars probably matter, I would say, just a tad more than your actual voice. Because you can march in the streets and you can throw the Molotov cocktails and you can hold the signs and you can do all the poetry slams that you want. But if you're still supporting businesses that have 2% or 1% black people in management positions, then my question is, how is that really effective other than you just making noise? But if you can hurt them economically, that tends to always get a couple of ears to actually listen to make changes. I mean, they just outed the CEO of Bleacher Report because he couldn't give a straight answer on how to diversify his board of directors or other people in high management positions making decisions. They got rid of him. The employees voted him out because and the board sided with him because he was bad for business long term. You are a sports company. What, 65% of all the athletes in this country are black, and you got nobody black in charge in the management making side of the business, you have to leave. That's what we need to be doing. That's more effective, at least in my opinion. That's, to me, that's the real protest. That's substantive for all of us. But we'll see if we get there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, all right, we have to leave it there because we've gone on this one for a while. So it's a good discussion, but we'll probably come back to protesting at a later point because there's more to talk about. So I think that's good, guys. I think we did a good job. And hopefully people understand the power of protesting and the power of education, not just for ourselves, but also educating the groups that don't understand why we are protesting.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. Good discussion.